Many would say the fastest path into the metaverse is to use the browsers you already have. At Continuum XR, Michael and his team are experts at building compelling web based augmented reality experiences for brands both big and small. Today, Michael would like to take a moment to share his experiences, how others can get started in WebAR, the pitfalls to avoid, and the keys to success. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Michael Murdoch.
All right. Thanks, Scott. I'm honored to be here and excited to share with you guys some of the things that I've learned about augmented reality. So my name is Michael. I'm the CCO and co-founder of Continuum XR. My background was in computer science with an emphasis in animation. I went into the movie industry, working at Sony and Fox, worked on movies such as The Amazing Spider-Man, Men in Black 3, Ice Age, Rio, Epic, Peanuts, and a bunch of other movies as well. I left the movie industry in 2015 to dive into virtual reality and augmented reality. And now I run a team of 20 talented AR and VR developers and artists innovating in the AR, VR, and Web3 space. And today I'm going to talk to you about, like Scott said, probably one of the most accessible portals into the metaverse, that being WebAR. So I know that this will be kind of redundant for most of you, but I would like to at least provide a baseline description of what I consider to be augmented reality. So augmented reality is overlaying synthetic content onto the real world to augment and enhance a sensory experience. I looked kind of like into the history of AR and wanted to share with you guys something that I think is kind of cool. I'm a huge theme park nerd, and there's an effect called the Pepper's Ghost effect. So obviously today I'm going to talk about digital augmented reality, but I thought I'd kind of throw in this idea of a practical augmented reality that started hundreds of years ago. So John Pepper, he was an English scientist who lived in the mid 1800s, and he's credited with this technique, often referred to as the Pepper's Ghost effect, which utilized light and glass to create a sort of holographic projection mapping effect. And it often allowed for a ghost-like character to appear on a stage through angled glass. You can see the same effect in many popular Disney attractions, or even recreated at Halloween at households. But at the Haunted Mansion in particular, the famous ballroom scene as you go by and you see all the people dancing on the bottom and the ghost swinging from the chandelier, that's using this technique. And in a lot of ways, that would be what I could consider practical AR. Obviously, today we're talking about the digital metaverse, but you can still think of augmented reality as enhancing the real world, just like Pepper's Ghost effect, right? And that it's a portal that really connects us to the metaverse and the real world. The most common types of devices used today are smartphones and tablets by far. That's the most adopted augmented reality. And it's called mobile pass-through AR. That's kind of the technical term, essentially using your camera within the phone, and then that camera feed overlays digital content on top. There's obviously the full head-mounted displays that many of you are probably familiar with or have used, such as Magic Leap and HoloLens. Ironically, they actually use a very similar technique to the Pepper's Ghost effect by bouncing light rays onto a specialized angled glass lens. There's also mixed reality headsets, the very recently deployed MetaQuest Pro, the Vario XR3, and the rumored Apple AR VR headset coming out hopefully next year. So these head-mounted displays, they completely occlude the world around you, but then reproject a video feed into your eyes that's a 3D feed and allows you to see the world, but also overlay digital content. So those are kind of the current advancing mechanisms that we are able to experience augmented reality with. So then what specifically is WebAR? I'd invite those of you who are on a desktop to scan this QR code with your mobile device. Anyone who is unable to, obviously, can just watch the video on the right, which is just a screen recording of the exact same experience. But as you can see, it's very quick to deploy, very simple. WebAR is just driven by a web browser, and it's done primarily through a mobile device or tablet. And so as you can see, you can have interactions, you can play video, Hopefully you've been able to experience that. I'm going to be jumping to the next slide here soon, but this is just a very low barrier, simple demo of how something can instantly come alive and be more engaging and interactive. So as of today, there's really 4 different ways to create a WebAR experience. First would be based off of image tracking. So essentially what you need here is a predetermined image that will act as the anchor. You'll be hearing anchor a lot as I discuss these different terms. It'll be the anchor for the digital content. So the example from the previous slide was using an image target. A business card was the trigger for the camera to recognize what could be then the anchor for the digital content. In the example here on this slide here, this is for Pizza Hut. They did a campaign where they were able to have their users play Pac-Man on top of pizza boxes. So the next type of tracking is facial tracking. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is most commonly used in social apps like TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. But you can also create a much more limited face tracking experience that uses either your mobile device or even your webcam in a website to overlay digital content onto a user's face. Then there's world tracking, or probably better term for this would be called SLAM. This is simultaneous localization and mapping. And basically, you're using your device to detect another anchor, which would be the primary plane of your environment, whether that's a ground or a desk, and it'll use that infinite plane to anchor the content to. So in the example here, you see a little guy running around. Essentially, the device has found the floor and is projecting this synthetic content onto the floor. Most recently introduced is a technology created by the same developers as Pokemon Go. This is they refer to it as Lightship VPS. VPS stands for Visual Positioning System. The anchor in this case is actually a geolocation-based experience that is also tethered to a real-world asset. So rather than just detecting a general plane surface, VPS is actually looking for a specific structure to then anchor the digital content to. So you may recognize that sign in the example on the right. That's just this is my office. So this experience down here was actually a prototype demo we put together here at Continuum to have this little monkey from one of the VR game that we're developing. He runs around on my actual couch. He swings from vines from my shelf. You can see there's occlusion happening. This is a very unique technique that can't be done through these other more traditional methods of augmented reality. So something we're kind of excited about. Also in its infancy and still evolving. So anyways, I kind of wanted to share with you guys our start in WebAR and how we got to this place. So when I first started in augmented reality development, it was all app-based. I was building for iOS and Android. My first AR app I ever launched was for a company called Nu Skin. The AR app that you can see on the right for the LumaSpa device, it was sent out to all their consumers and was to enable them to see the product in their space before the product was released. The experience was so successful that when Nu Skin had their next product, which you can see on the right here, the Boost device, they wanted to launch another WebAR app through the App Store and through Android. So they hired us to make an updated version. So we cloned our previous app, we updated some features, added some features, and swapped out the product for the new device. However, when we went to publish on the App Store, Apple rejected it. We went weeks trying to figure it out, working back and forth directly with their developers to resolve the issue. But long story short, their policies had completely changed and they no longer allowed for the same type of AR experiences for companies like Nu Skin. And we were unable to move forward. And I panicked since Nu Skin was one of our biggest clients. And this was a fairly large AR project for our very small company at the time. I had to look for options, and I decided to finally look into this tech that I kept hearing about, and that was WebAR. And I was just blown away. Within 1 week, we had a complete working link that we could send to the client and all of their consumers. It worked globally on any device and didn't require an app to download. And it was a huge hit and another success. So WebAR definitely has its strengths. It's quick and simple, like I said, to launch and also to use. Hopefully, some of you were able to experience it. I have another experience here in a couple minutes that you can also try if you want to have your phones out and ready. It has all the sensory impact and immersion that augmented reality has in the more complex techniques. Certainly, maybe not the same wow factor, but absolutely that engagement is still there. It works on almost all web-based enabled visual devices, including VR headsets and desktops, so you can port over your WebAR experiences into a desktop and VR headset pretty easily. It's incredibly quick to develop and push for, as we've discussed, and it's available on over 3.5 billion devices. And it just continues to advance. And we'll talk a little bit more about those advances later. Now, there absolutely are limitations of WebAR. First and foremost, if you don't have internet or very poor internet, it'll basically make the experience unusable. Whereas with an app, you could still download the app and have that localized. Those 3.5 billion devices that are capable are not created equal, and they will perform based off of their technology, their operating system, and their web browser. And that will be different for each device and can make for very cumbersome debugging. Internet and older devices are maybe they're pushing their tech, but they're really not able to always keep up, especially if you have a more complex experience. Also, the rendering of WebAR is definitely not as high quality as what you can produce through an app. So your stuff is harder to make look as good as it would in an app. Just mobile pass-through AR in general, you're limited to a very small window. I mean, you got that small device to have your AR experiences. It's not as immersive as an entire headset. So due to all of this, you'll never have that same wow effect in moments that you have maybe with other metaverse experiences. However, it is something that is there today and ready for people to use. And with open source resources and large tech companies continually innovating in this space, the capabilities just continue to grow while the limitations are diminishing. And some of the tech leaders in this space that continue to push this, as I mentioned before, Niantic, the ones who created Pokemon Go, their web-based experience is EighthWall. Actually, EighthWall was acquired by Niantic recently. So EighthWall is what we use 95% of the time with our AR development. But you also have Zapper, Vectory, and Okavu that are other examples of providers in the web AR space, but this is certainly not a comprehensive list of all of those providers. In general, the power of AR is immense. It doubles the level of attention versus other channels, which is why it's really solid for marketing. And we have some case studies we're going to talk about in just a second here. It increases memory recall by 70% over other traditional mediums such as images and video and text. Customers are 48% more likely to use vendors that employ AR, and you have a higher conversion rate of up to 40% and 35% fewer returns on retail product purchases that use AR. Here's a couple case studies that are provided by EighthWall. Pretty impressive stuff. If you want to look into it a little bit more, I'd invite you to go to EighthWall's site and see what they've done. There's a lot of examples of projects, including ones we've done on their site. This first one was done by the Dodgers. They had a 1.5 minute dwell time on their experience, which was basically, as we talked about earlier, kind of a facial tracking experience. It had an 18% click-through rate, which for those of you who know click-through rates, that's incredibly high. Saatchi Art, they had basically a virtual gallery that they created, and they were 14 times more likely to have consumers purchase if they used AR versus not using it. And they also spent 17% more. And Pot Noodle is another example. They had a 5 times multiplier and increase on applicants and reached 2.4 million. So we are getting to the end of this, but I'd invite you. This is a SLAM-based experience or a world tracking experience. This is one we built, and it's basically Fruit Ninja in AR, in mobile AR. So you can see these kids playing it here. Just to wrap up here quickly, very successful campaign. We're actually doing another campaign with Maverick now because of the success of this. They saw a 21% increase in sales, but when they compared locations that had this experience versus didn't. And all they had to have was a 1-inch QR code on the glass outside of the drinks. 4.5 minute dwell time, which is crazy because the game only lasts 1 minute. So there must have been kids playing it for like an hour at a time to bring that up. 3.5% of users shared it and a 6% unit lift at all locations again. So WebAR is amazing. It's going to continue to advance. The adoption is going to continue to increase. And as wearables become more prominent, I believe that there will be more integration into those, such as Meta's and Apple's and Google's headsets. And so that's my presentation, and I'm very excited to have shared that with you guys today. You can learn more about our company at continuum-xr.com.